Hello, Dave here. Welcome to Learn JavaScript with me, going through the book exercises. The book is, let me bring that up here for a moment, Modern JavaScript, Develop and Design, written by Larry Ullman. I picked it up off of Amazon. I'm sure you can just do a search on Modern JavaScript, Develop and Design, or you may also go to larryullman.com. And working through these exercises here, and been breaking them down by chapter. We're in chapter 8, and this is the fifth and final exercise related to event handling in chapter 8. So if I zip up to chapter 8, event handling, could have also gotten here by going to my chapter 8 exercises. And we're updating this calculate membership. And just so you know, you can go to davecoast.com. If you go to this Learning JavaScript on the nav bar, it'll take you to these exercises that you can look at and debug online. And I have a post out there with a link to js.davecoast.com. That's what we're looking at, or that's actually here, js.davecoast.com. All these exercises are out there. And here's a link to larryullman.com if you're interested in more information about the book. And here's a link to HTML, JS, and CSS, all the files behind these exercises. So going back to, here's our exercise. Notice that it's Chapter 8, Event Handling 5, Calculate Membership. Just wanted to show, I'll go back to here for a moment. In Chapter 5, we did this membership calculation, and this was just introducing us to the switch statement and doing some math, and we'll see that now we upgrade it so that we use the DOM level 2 specification for the event handlers, and we're introducing the concept of preventing default behavior with the browser, and there's a method for that. So that's the key point of this exercise. As far as the 5 exercises of Chapter 8, the first one is the utility object, and that's basically we created a little utility library for methods in there. We have the $ method to reference HTML elements, the set text method, and we can, as long as we're talking about it for a moment here, let me bring up the code here. And if we look at the utilities, like I said, this code is available, and you can also see it if you go into the debugger. But we create this variable u, and this is, if you go out and look at the videos, this is the event handling 1 video, where we go through each of these in detail, but there's 4 of them: the $ method, the set text method, the add event method, and the remove event method. And I also have, here's our chapter 5 code. This is what we did with this is how we did it in chapter 5. And we'll compare that, but basically we have, starting at the bottom here, when the window was loaded, we execute the membership listen function, and this membership listen function listens for the form to be submitted, the on submit button. So if you press the button, it'll execute the Calc membership, which is here, this Calc membership function. And the Calc membership function basically sets up a couple of references to the variables on the screen and does a switch statement. So it introduced the switch statement here, handy dandy statement, and does the calculation, simple calculation, and puts that calculation back on the screen. So now we upgrade it. It's not that much different. There's the HTML. And once again, didn't really need to make any changes to the HTML, except for we added the utilities library prior to the actual member or the actual JavaScript that we're going to take a look at right now. So this is really the only statement that was added. The key relevant HTML is this form from here to here, and here's the variables that we're using. Here's the IDs, or here's the IDs that are being referenced. So zipping out here, here's our actual JavaScript code. And let's start at the bottom once again. We'll take a quick look at the code. We'll go through debugger in the program, and we'll consider chapter 8 completely covered. So now our window onload function does 3 listeners, and this is using the DOM level specification 2 listening by doing this add event, and it's doing the add event from the utilities. So the important piece here is that if the browser supports, up here, here's the add event method. If the browser supports the add event listener, we use that. Otherwise, for if it's IE 8 or before, we have to use the attach event. So coming back here, so now we have 3 event listeners as opposed to just the button. So one, here's the submit button, updated, right? Previously, our submit button was this statement here, and that's all it did was on the on submit. That's the traditional way of setting the listener. So now we're doing this the new way, right? Passing the 3 parameters, and we're using the $sign method from the utility again here. So here we're using 2 methods, both on the same statement, but we're doing 1 submit and 2 change listening events, and all 3 of them execute the same Calc membership function. So let's take a look at this Calc membership function. We execute the function, or we define the function, and it accepts an argument. The argument is E, and that is the event object. Could have named it anything. E is just the handy dandy shortcut that they use in the book. Then if E is undefined, then we set E to the window.event. And this is, so E will be available if it's IE 9 or later. But if it's prior to IE 9, we have to use window.event to access the event object. We create a variable called member cost. We create a variable called member type, and we reference the member type from the screen. We create a variable called member length, and we reference the member length from the screen. And then if member length and it has a value, then we convert it to a integer, or well, to a number, but so parse integer. So we convert that to a number, and then if all of the values are valid, right, including it being greater than 0, then we go ahead and based on the value with the switch statement, we get a member cost amount and we do the calculation. If the years are greater than 1, so 2 or more, we do the member cost by 80, we apply a 20% discount, just strictly math, and this is all the same basically that we did prior. And now we put this calculated cost, we put it back onto the screen for visibility, and we also change it back to a string and put 2 decimal points on it. Then otherwise, if the E type, this else is if it's not valid data, right? If we did not put valid data in the screen, then we use that event object and check the type of it. Only if it is the submit button. If it is the change, we're not going to do it. Then we will place this text out on the screen. And the reason we only do it on the submit button is if you put a value in there, or if it's the very first time the screen comes up, it's not going to have valid data, so we want to prevent from just putting a useless message out there. And then we do the prevent default, and this prevents the default form submission because we've already done it with the JavaScript. And again, this is just the browser agnostic code. This is the non-IE prior to 8, and this is the IE prior to 8 way of writing that code. So if it is available in the current browser, we use it. Otherwise, we fall back on the pre-IE browser stuff, and we return false like previously as normal extra caution like we did prior. So there's our code. Let's take a look at that in Debugger. And I'll move this out of the way. Here's our screen. Let's just take a look at it once here, right? If I go ahead and change this to the basic 15, notice it instantly put that 15 out there. Well, previously I would have had to press this button to do that calculation. The same goes here. If I change this 1 to a 5, right, and lose that focus from there, ooh, it just automatically did the calculation. And if I go VVFG, right, a non-number value, right, now if I lose focus or I change it, notice it can't recalculate that. It still shows the 60 that it had before, but now when I press the button and do the submit, I get the error message, right? And that's to prevent it from erroring out from the beginning, even though we default to a value of 1 there. So let's turn on Firebug, and I'm going to detach that, reload it, bring up our JavaScript here. Oop, I already had the breakpoint out there. Let me take that off, and I'll put that back on. But anyway, this brings up the JavaScript. This is the same code we just walked through. And now I'm going to place a breakpoint at the first executable statement so that it breaks and we can walk through all of the code. So that's there. And I come out here, and let's go ahead. I will change this to a valid number, and I'll change that to 3 years. I lose focus. So now it triggered the change event. Notice that we have this E over here. There's our object, right? That argument came in. If I just hover over it, notice that it's got a change, right? So it was the change event from this, right? I'll just scroll down here, right? Here's our listeners. We have 3 listeners. We have a submit listener, that's the type of event, and 2 change events, right? One is on the form itself, and this one is on the member type, and this is on the member length, right? Those are the HTML elements. So this change event, right? I changed the type, and that's why it triggered that change event. So let's go ahead and take a look at the code here. It's doing that if, and so if E is undefined, well, it's not undefined, it's equal to change, so we didn't need to use the pre-IE, so we have that event object. Then we created this member cost, and again, I'm clicking this so that, right, it highlights the statement that it's about to execute, right, and it highlights this cost. And remember down here, notice that we have, right, the console. I can move this up, and if I go to the console, right, this is all from hovering over things, so don't worry about these error messages. I'm just going to clear those out of the way. And if I just type e.type over there and run it, see, it shows me the change, and just showing that we can bop back into the console. Let's go back to the script here. See, and it shows those values there. I just cleared that out. But the beauty of this guy here, right? You can see all of the methods available for the E for that object. We did E type. Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure of another useful one to look at right at the moment that makes sense, except for type. Oh, and the E type, that's the other one I was thinking of, and E target, right? And let me hit enter here. And the E target shows us the target. Here's the element from the HTML, right? Here's the member length ID. So this is the element that triggered the event, right? And that's all passed and available in this E object. Okay. Anyway, very interesting. Use the console. The console is your buddy. Let's keep going here, right? So we're about to execute this member type. And when we execute this, notice that it's using our U function, right? This is our utilities library, right? Right now we're in the ch8 member.js. That's the file we're in, right? It shows us this calc membership. That's the function that we're in here, right? So now I step one more time, and notice that we're in the utilities and we're in the dollar, right? And it came from the calc membership, right? So here now we're in the $ method. And like I said, event handling one, if you want to see all of these pieces, but basically this is reusable code, and this sets up the reference to the element. And I'll click through that. We return. Going to do the same thing here. Or now we're done with that one. We're going to do the same for the member length and get the member length. But now if I look up here at this, member type, it shows me that it has that. There's the select on there, and that's the ID. See down here, it's undefined. Here it has a value. And let's go ahead, buzz through the utility and execute that. So now, right, member length is not undefined anymore. It does have a value. See, member length dot value is equal to 3. That's what we put in there. And we will do the parse init. Right, so now member length is an integer 3. Notice that it's not read and in quotes. It's no longer a string. It's now a number. And let's keep going. And now the member type. Has a value. The member length has a value. So now we go into the switch statement. And we'll go ahead and put an invalid value in next and buzz through again quick. But now, so we're going through this switch statement, right? And it's going to check this member type dot value. Ooh, it is cheapo, so it's going to do the very first one. So I click through there, and let's keep stepping, right? So it did this switch. The case 1 is equal, so it's going to set it equal to $10. And it breaks out of the switch statement, does the calculation. Nothing fancy happening there. Now it's putting that value out to the screen. So if I come over here, you'll see that it still has the invalid value out there. And let me bring the debugger back up here. Now, after we execute this statement, we should have our calculated value. And we go through, we do the utility to put it out to the screen. Now we've executed that value. And we see now that we have $24, which is 80% of the $30. And back to debugger. Step. Now we're doing that prevent default. And we return false. And we're back out here. So that's going through a normal time. And like I said, you can go out to js.davecoast.com, debug away. Now, I'm going to put in some invalid data, and I'm going to put in X, Y, Z. Now, if I just lose focus, right, it's going to bop out here, but it's not going to put the error message out there because it's not e.type is equal to change, and it's not equal to submit. So I am going to just buzz through this real quick. I guess I could have set a breakpoint down there and got down to it quicker, but see, so now it's checking this equal to submit. It's not going to put the error message out. And it returns, and now we're back, but it didn't do anything. But now if I click the submit button, and now it's basically the same, only the only difference is this E is submit and not change. So let's bop on through and get our variables. Right now we have our reference variables. Now it says if member length, and it's converting it, right? So this dot value, oh, it's equal to XYZ. It's going to try to do this parse init, and it should fail, right? So that should have failed. So now member type dot value is equal to change, or cheapo rather, but member dot length is equal to NaN, right? Which is not a number. So that should return a false value, and we should not execute the switch statement. So, and member length, oh, okay, yeah. See, that's why we did not execute these statements, and we bopped right down here to the else. Now we're going to check, is eType equal to submit? And here's, right, this is how the programming works. And now we should put this error message out to the screen. Because right now, right, it's still showing $24. So let's step on through, right? It does the reference and puts that out to the screen. And now I see the invalid value. So there's our error message. And voila, we prevent the default browser behavior because we put the message out there, and that will make more of a difference when we stop it from submitting it to server-side scripts. So once again, let's take a look at the screen. Chapter 8, Event Handling 5. We have now completed Chapter 8. Looking forward to getting into Chapter 9. Questions or comments, please get a hold of me, dave@davecoast.com, or leave a comment at the bottom of the video. Thank you very much for watching.